us, and a very, very warm welcome to this Art and Christianity event. I'm so pleased that we've got lots of people from Birmingham, and also friends and followers of Jake's. It's really fantastic that you're joining us. So welcome, especially to you. I'm Laura Moffat, as you can see on the screen. I'm Director of Art and Christianity, and it's a real pleasure to welcome Jake here tonight to talk to us online, and also to have a respondent, one of our trustees, Ayla Lepine, who I'll speak about a little bit more in a moment. I'm just going to run through a very few quick housekeeping things. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, really, but I'm going to say them anyway. So if you can keep yourselves on mute during the talking of Jake's presentation, but also when Jake and Ayla are just speaking with each other. And then we have allowed a good 20 minutes for Q&A after that. So after that point, please do unmute yourselves and talk to us and join in the conversation. I'm told it's also worth turning off your cameras during Jake's presentation, because it helps if there are any bandwidth issues. So that might be useful too. If you just want to see Jake during the talk and you don't want to be distracted by any other little windows of other people, can I suggest you change your view, which is the top, if you go to the top right hand corner of your screen, you'll see view, and you choose speaker view, then that will help you to just see Jake or Ayla as they're talking. I'm going to suggest that people, because I think you may have thoughts that occur to you or questions during the talk and during the conversation between Ayla and Jake. And so if you would like to get those on paper, as it were, during that time, please use the chat function. You can type a question or a thought in there, and then we can bring that in during the Q&A in the last sort of 20 minutes of the event. I'll be keeping an eye on those, and I'll do my best to make sure those questions are answered. But also, as I mentioned, we will take questions if you want to raise your hand or use the raise hand icon in the Zoom function, then that would be great during the Q&A. As we've mentioned, this event is being recorded, so if you don't want your face to appear on the recording of it, which is shared among our members, but also sometimes a bit more publicly than that, please just do keep your camera off. So I'm just going to explain a tiny bit about the sort of springboard for this event. This goes back to 2019, in fact, and of course 2019 was a world before Zoom, so I don't think we'd even conceived of the idea of doing anything like this at that point. But 2019 was the year in which we last gave the Art and Christianity Awards. These are awards that have gone back different sort of cycles, but since 2002 we've had a set of Art and Christianity Awards for art in a religious context. So that's art that takes place in a worshipping space, and that's really important to us, that's where this art happens. It can be any faith. They are open to all faith, our awards, and I'm delighted to say that right at this moment, literally yesterday, I was with the current judging panel viewing some of the shortlisted pieces for this year's awards, and they are very exciting. So please look out for those as we announce the shortlists in early March, and then the prize giving that takes place in April. So the reason for my saying that is that Jake Lever and Stephen Owen were the two winners of the Art Award in that year, in 2019. And Stephen will be doing a similar event. Stephen's with us tonight, I think. Stephen will be doing a similar event to that on the 12th of February. So look out for that and do join that as well if you can. Speaking about his work for the Guildford Baptist Church. That was the winner of the category for permanent commission in a place of worship. And Jake's piece, Soul Boats, which is the focus of our discussion this evening, was the winner of the temporary category. So that's just by way of a little bit of background for tonight's event. So we're looking back a little bit at that, but it's obviously also very current, particularly to those of us involved with art and Christianity. So I'm going to hand over now to Jake, and after Jake's presentation, which you'll see on your screens, he's going to join in some conversation with Ayla. That should take us around to about 6:40, and after that we'll open it up to Q&A from the rest of you, and hopefully have a really good conversation between all of us. Over to you, Jake.
Many thanks, Laura, and thank you, Ayla, for your part in this as well, and welcome this evening to everyone here. So I'm going to talk with some slides around three themes. They're on the slide there: celebration, co-creation, and connection. And for each of those, I'm going to speak about one project per theme. So Ayla and I share a passion for Corita Kent, so I will also weave in references to her. In case you're not familiar with Corita Kent, she was a Catholic nun living and working in LA in the 1960s. She was an internationally significant pop artist, making vibrant, fabulous silkscreen prints, as well as being head of art at Emmanuel Hart College. Her 1967 print, Things Go Better With, typifies her approach, where she paired the Coca-Cola jingle with a hand-scrawled passage by activist priest Reverend Daniel Berrigan, recasting it as a call for peace, justice, unity, and love in response to the division during the Vietnam War. The Juiciest Tomato of All is a work which features in Ayla's forthcoming book, Women, Art, God, Spirituality in the Work of 12 Artists, which I gather is out in the summer. My practice as an artist is very much, so it's often socially engaged and participatory, and that's been directly informed by my work as an art educator in schools, galleries, and universities. And so people like Corita have been an important role model for me as an artist teacher. So part one, celebration. So I'll start in rural Gloucestershire to explore the first theme. Around 2010, I was living in Cheltenham, and not far from my home was the tiny Norman church here of Hales, once a field chapel for pilgrims journeying to the holy shrine in the adjacent Cistercian abbey. Pilgrimage has always fascinated me. The outward physical ritual act of walking, mirroring a hidden inner journey, the physical stretch and the soul stretch working together. A group of us, myself and my artist partner Gillian, Rachel, a local historian, and Nikki, the priest of Hales, had a collective vision to reanimate this ancient site of pilgrimage with a community event involving artists, musicians, and storytellers. We wanted to honour this history of place whilst inviting contemporary pilgrims to reflect upon their own journey through life, to be part of the wider rediscovery of pilgrimage in the 21st century. This is me and my father Peter on the right there, on one of his boats. He loved boats all his life, being the son of a naval seaman. Now, in 2009, he died, and I found myself instinctively making a skeletal boat. Weaving this framework in willow seemed to come from a deep, primal yearning to honour his passage into the next life. I recalled that he himself had made a boat from a kit, something as a boy in the 1970s I found both kind of intriguing and magical. The 2010 pilgrimage to Hales provided the context for the installation of this piece, a 5-meter long gilded vessel hung high by ropes in the nave of the church. Cardboard from supermarkets was gilded and used to clad the willow structure. Now, in Christian symbolism, the church is often associated with the idea of a sanctuary, a vessel in which to cross the seas of life to the harbour of heaven. More specifically, model boats are sometimes hung as votive prayers of thanksgiving for safe passage of those at sea. But this was more mystical, something resonant of both a cradle and a womb, but also a kind of coffin and a tomb. I also showed smaller, more fragile vessels based upon pre-industrial archetypal boat forms. And these were the first soul boats, as I called them, hinting at a community of souls. This artwork that was part of a wider event that integrated visual arts with storytelling, music, and circus performance, and connected people around food, drink, campfires, as well as worship. So in a sense, this wider focus on pilgrimage and celebration held this very personal meditation on my father's journey so that it became one voice among many. Now, as far as I know, Corita was never involved in pilgrimages as an artist, but whilst teaching at the Immaculate Heart College, she was invited to organise the annual Mary Day parade. So in 1964, her students made banners, paraded and sang songs in honour of Mother Mary, a transformation from the sombre ritual of previous years, in the words of Corita, making Mary relevant for our time. Now, in the 1960s, California, it might have been called a happening, and now we might refer to this as socially engaged art practice. Whatever the term, it reimagined a communal religious ritual in a way that fused art, life, and performance. I didn't know Corita's work back in 2010, but I think we were doing something similar at Hales, using the arts to animate the story of this sacred site in ways that were life-giving and celebratory. Part 2, co-creation. So I now want to reflect upon my role as an artist in developing participatory work through looking at soul boats at Birmingham Cathedral. As part of the cathedral's 300th anniversary in 2015, Dean Catherine Ogle wanted, in her words, to give the cathedral away to the people of Birmingham. Aside from the symbolic connections between cathedral naves and ships, Birmingham's history as a city is particularly interwoven with the stories of canals and industrial boats. I wanted to invite a few thousand people to collectively make a flotilla of boats. So I designed a template which doubled as an invitation to participate. The hull of each vessel was gold, but the private space inside was an open area for words, images, collage, prayers, quotes or sayings by each individual, a framework that was open enough to encourage personal responses, yet contained to enable people to feel confident and find their voice. Workshops took place across the city, as well as in a tent in the cathedral grounds. So shoppers, office workers, refugees, school children, hospice residents, youth clubs, all participated, reflecting many faiths and none. This is the tent that was outside the cathedral. In a commitment to privacy, the boats were hung high above the nave, which released people to be totally honest. Boats were made as highly personal forms of reflection, as vessels to honor loved ones who had died, as cries for help in finding employment and for justice, as prayers of thanksgiving and gratitude, as with this one shown with the permission of the maker. All 2,000 boats that were made were hung in the cathedral as one giant boat-shaped flotilla heading east. The flotilla gently curved and bowed in the middle, echoing the hull of a giant vessel. And they bobbed around in air currents created by visitors below. This constellation of souls held polarities in tension. It was both fragile and bold, public and private, full of individual expression, yet communal. At the time, with discussion about Brexit and immigration dividing the nation, the single unified flotilla seemed significant, a statement. I wanted to echo the words of MP Jo Cox and say that we have far more in common than that which divides us. Looking back, so much seems to have happened since 2015. The murder of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, the COVID pandemic, the rise of popularist politics and the far right, the intensification of the climate emergency, and all amplified by the noise of social media. In a similar time of turbulence, growing inequality and violence during the 1960s, Corita said a really interesting thing, and I'll say it quite slowly because it's so important, I think. There is an energy in the creative process that belongs in the league of those energies which can uplift, unify, and harmonize all of us. And here she is with her students at the Immaculate Heart College. The image on the left shows two teenagers making soul boats during a session at The Feast, an organization that brings Christian and Muslim young people together. Like Corita, I believe that the very act of bringing different people around a table to make something together is a radical form of activism. Part 3, our final theme is connection. And I'll talk about Do the Little Things, which is from 2020 to around 2021. A very different kind of project that involved me in making 350 tiny gilded boats, each about 12, 11 centimeters long, that journeyed across the globe. So in March 2020, as we know, the pandemic struck and most things, pretty much everything, stopped. There were no visits to see friends or relatives, no social gatherings, yet human life in all its beauty and messiness continued. I began noticing how people honored one another through really small, quiet acts of kindness, love, and care. And I wondered how I could be part of this. I questioned, what could I do as an artist in this extraordinary time? And I had a strong urge to connect with loved ones through sending them a handmade object. So I decided to make the smallest boats that I possibly could make in a project called Do the Little Things, after the words of St. David, who encouraged his followers on his deathbed in 589 to be joyful, keep the faith, and do the little things that you have heard and seen me do. Lots of things had stopped, but the postal service continued worldwide. So I started to send the boats in little CD boxes to my close family and friends, tokens of love, solidarity, and connection. And then I decided to widen the project and enable people to order from our website and send them on to their loved ones across the UK and the whole world. Pricing was structured around what people could afford to pay. So, like Corita's prints, they were accessible to people who could not normally afford to buy original art. One participant, Jenny, wrote the following: I suppose the boats resonated with me as representing safe passage in times of transition, both joyful and traumatic. I sent them to friends as waymarkers at times of change when I couldn't be physically present with them. They were little golden parcels of love amidst fear and loss and newness. Her words are testimony to the possibility of art to facilitate authentic human connection, to enable us to be emotionally present to each other in real and honest ways, to animate the threads of human connection at a time when relationships were painfully compromised by social distancing and the limitations of screen-based communication. The stories behind the exchange of these boats were as significant as the journeys. One was sent to a friend emerging from a coercive relationship, another for the birth of a baby on the other side of the world, another for the death of a child in Ireland. This couple from Myanmar were absolutely amazed that they received a boat through the post from their friend in the UK, the first time in years that anything had got through the post in that way. So in total, 350 exist across the globe, from Myanmar to Manhattan, Barbados to Bangkok, Santiago to Sydney. Some people made domestic shrines for their boats. And reflecting back on the project, I think it revealed a primal human need to mark sacramental and significant moments through the visceral physicality of an object. Somehow, these tiny vessels, both cradling yet open and vulnerable, enabled people to honor each other in an extraordinary global experience of rupture, chaos, and journeying into the unknown. So summing up, we've seen 3 projects which I hope reveal how I have tried to integrate art and life, both for myself and with participants. 2 operated within church contexts, the 3rd outside. These are some of the thousands and thousands of colour slides taken by Corita. She liked to quote a Balinese saying, "We have no art, we do everything as well as we can." She went on to explain, you don't have art off in a little niche somewhere, someplace. You have no distinction between what is art and what is not art. You do everything as well as you can. In recent years, I've been interested in exploring ancient indigenous cultures, which, like Balinese culture, have no separate category for human activity called art. When I visited the British Museum's Stonehenge exhibition just after the pandemic, I came across these golden boats made around 4,000 years ago. The museum labeled them as cups of kindness, suggesting that they might have been chalices passed around at ritual ceremonies. I was amazed. I'd never seen them before, either digitally or physically. Coincidentally, at that point, at the point that I first saw these ancient vessels, one of the Do the Little Things boats had just entered the museum's collection, a record of human creative activity during the pandemic. Whether or not it's called art, it's my belief that we will continue to create images and objects as expressions of love and connection, helping us to navigate this extraordinary life. Thank you.
Jake, thank you so much for sharing these projects, for sharing your insights, and for sharing the way in which Corita Kent has inspired you.
Pleasure.
I've been a follower of lots of wonderful reactions here. I love how Zoom does this. It's marvelously affirming, I hope. I've been a follower of your work, and I've been curious about the way that you you do a lot of stuff that really invokes the uncertain borderlands and heartlands of the risks as well as the joys of collaboration. You never know what's going to happen when
Absolutely.
you invite someone else or someone's else to participate in an art world. It's as though each boat is like a vessel that is filled with potential that can be heart-making, that can be heartbreaking, and that can be a space of courage and trust, or perhaps a space of rupture or of unexpected feeling in one way or another. And so the risks and the costs, as well as the joys of community making as art making, is always something that I wonder about in these shimmering and glimmering projects that you've done in a variety of ways, in places big and small, as well as with groups big and small. I have, before we spend time together in conversation, and like you, I'm sure I am so curious about what everyone who has gathered here this evening is thinking about, what they might want to share. And so this dialogue between you and I, Jake, is also an opportunity for folks to contemplate and to consider what they've heard you say, what they've seen you share, so that we can enrich our time together when we come to all speak together. So I'm always excited about that. I'm always curious about what we're going to unwrap together collectively, even remotely and through our screens. I would love to ask you, I wrote down, I wrote them down and I counted them, which I shouldn't have done. I wrote down 37 questions that I would like to ask you over the course of your presentation. And so we will be here for 4 hours, and no one is allowed to leave until you've answered them all. That obviously is not the case. I will be selective, but simply to say that the way in which your work can help me, and perhaps I'm sure help others to formulate life's biggest questions, faith and spirit's biggest questions, and then to watch them kind of bifurcate or drift along. Or I would ask a question of myself about art and sacrament, and then you would be like, well, the thing about the sacramental, or I'd think about collaboration, or about history, or about working in different environments, and then up it would come. And I just thought, this is really exciting. So it's also an opportunity for me, on behalf of everybody here, to thank you and to honor you, and Jillian and everybody else who works together as part of this really genuinely collaborative and co-creative practice that you have. No artist works by themselves. No artist works by themselves, ever. And no educator is ever alone. Otherwise, what are we doing? And from the point of view of Christianity, theology, and ritual too, of many different creative and imagined kinds, because God holds us in God's own infinitude of loving creativity. We are only here, I would say, from my theological point of view, because of God's capacity to love, which is then lodged within us as imaginative makers and participants in God's world. So there is such a thing for sure as loneliness, as isolation, and the suffering that that creates in the fragmentation of people and communities. But I would suggest, and art helps us to bring ourselves home back to this again and again, that we are never in fact alone in a way which can be as challenging as it is inspiring or even comforting. I would like to, if you are willing to indulge me, I'd like to share my screen to show people a little video from the Corita Kent Art Center of Corita Kent working, because I think it would be cool for folks to see. I am hoping that, Laura, is it possible for me to do that?
Yes, I've just made you co-host, so you
perfect. Okay, let's see. Share sound. Huh. Okay, I think that this will work. This was meant to be super simple, and now it's kind of like not super simple. I'm sorry. Okay. Hopefully this will work. Allows me to, yes. Ugh. Okay, never mind. I have updated my Zoom settings and it won't let me do it. And that is no one's problem but mine. So what I'm going to do is put the link to the Corita Kent Art Center video in the chat later on so that people can see it. What I would also like to do is to read to you from some of Corita's own words about art making and assignments. There are a number of fantastic publications about her. This is one that she wrote herself. It is one of my prized possessions. It's from the 1960s, and it's called Footnotes and Headlines, a Play-Pray book. So I'll put these in the link in the chat later on as well. So here is a little bit of Corita Kent talking about art and life and work. Anything well made is healthy nourishment for people who are trying to create. There is almost nothing that is not related to art. When teaching, I aim to present a wide range of ideas and images to confuse students out of their assumptions of what art is and how a class is taught. This gives them a broader horizon and more material from which relationships can be made. How can we become bright, hardworking, imaginative people by learning how to use our connecting ability to make new relationships, and by getting used to working very hard in ways that will develop our imaginations? The very word imagination implies that you are into territory no one has ever been to before. So with Corita Kent's words added to your own, the first thing that I would love to ask is, right back at the beginning, you showed an image in your introduction to part 1, celebration, and your work at Hales. And it's an image that we both really love. Things go better with. And the ... you know, things go better with. And the anticipation of that, if we know our advertisements from the 1960s, is that it's like things go better with Coca-Cola, like saying things go better with hamburgers or toilet paper or whatever it might be. And by removing that core word, the anticipation becomes a gap, becomes a possibility. So what do you think things go better with? What would you put? Things go better with?
Right, okay. I think what comes to mind is and it links to a conversation I had just before this event, trust. So if you think of Birmingham Cathedral with soul boats, but further back to Hales, in both of those contexts, there was a lot of trust needed from the people who were responsible. And I will now say Dean Catherine Ogle at Birmingham Cathedral, who's here with us tonight, and Reverend Nikki Arthey, who was the priest in charge of Hales. Nikki said, I went up to Nikki and said, I remember she was having an Easter fire outside of the church, and I went up to her and said, you don't want an artist in residence, do you? And she said, yeah, actually, I do. You know, I would love one. And I said, well, can I be that? And she more or less said, here's the key, go play for 2 or 3 years. You can just come in and go as you want and make what you want, and just play. And play is, as we know, kind of close to Corita's heart. But that trust, I mean, this is a medieval building with historic significance and so on. So the trust to say to an artist, just play in this space, was enormous. And then Catherine at Birmingham, who I think had the vision of just saying, well, actually, let's use the visual arts to give the cathedral away, to enable people to have a sense of ownership of the cathedral and feel that it's their space and their voices being honoured within that space. So I think things go better with trust. I think we're in a very difficult place with the lack of trust that is in the world. And I think the arts, the visual arts, all of the arts help to build connection, love, trust, a sense of honoring and seeing each other in all our wonderful difference.
And there's such a close relationship between trust and empathy. And I think that can, at least in my experience as a priest, as well as an educator and someone who works with art a lot, that can only start to grow if there is a quality of mutual courage, the imagination that it might be possible to build trust, knowing that it is utterly like artificial trust. That doesn't even exist. What an oxymoron. I was thinking, because of your work in sacred spaces and your sort of compelling take on sacramental stuff and on the sacraments, Corita Kent was really focused on the Eucharist and created a number of works which interacted with Wonder Bread packaging, where she was thinking about the idea of wonder bread and the mystical presence of Christ in Christ's body and blood. And so I was thinking about that beautiful phrase, which we sometimes hear in our Eucharistic prayers, all things come from you, and of your own do we give you.
Yes.
And then at the fraction, when the bread is broken, though we are many, we are one body, because we all share in one bread. So that made me curious about your relationship to the Eucharist, whether you're making work in a space that's specifically a church or a cathedral or a sacred space, or whether you're sending boats through the post during the pandemic. What's your relationship between your work and the Eucharist?
Oh.
You can just make something up. That's fine. Whatever.
I think
we're all just making it up.
the pandemic, the pandemic made me see how you need something to literally get hold of. You need something to ingest and to physically partake of. For me, the Eucharist is a very physical, embodied kind of way of drawing close to God. And the pandemic, I think, highlighted that need. So what that Do the Little Things project was about was saying that with all of our interconnectivity via screens as we are now, we need the physicality of connection. And some people, for example, bought two boats, and they had, one would be in London and the other one would be in Vancouver or, South Africa, or so that both people could commune around the objects that they both knew they had very similar objects and could kind of create their domestic shrines and feel connected through the physicality of that object. So for me, the Eucharist is central, and I love the physicality of it, and I love the rituals surrounding it, and very happy to partake.
Yeah. I've got one more for you before we ripple out into having a wider conversation with everyone. And it's about the relationship between text and image. I mean, particularly in the first one, there's cardboard with writing all over it, and then it becomes gilded, and then it becomes this extraordinary object. And in the Birmingham Cathedral example in particular, and it was so amazing. You were talking about people writing these messages, and then it having this quality of privacy, as well as this quality of intimacy. And Corita Kent too, the relationship between image as text and text as image, whether making it on her own or making it collaboratively. What's your relationship between image and text?
I've never really used text in my own work in a direct way, in the way that Corita uses this fabulous handwriting and typography. But I'm always interested in people in terms of participatory work. I think for many people, that's a useful entry point, a useful way of engaging with the blank space, as it were, because it can be quite scary to have a blank page and be asked to fill it. But words, significant places, people, names are a quick way for people to, I think, begin to locate themselves within the artwork and then build upon that. So Sue, who made that boat I showed, is a writer, and she, it's interesting that she's had words interspersed. She also loves the visual arts, so she had a kind of lovely array of kind of imagery as well. But and I remember one mother who was giving deep thanks for the birth of her child Molly, just wrote the one word in kind of almost like writing that was like knitting, at little tiny circles, baby Molly. The whole boat was just baby Molly. And I would have shown it tonight, but I didn't want to without her permission. And so I think for some people, words are significant. For me, they've never been a kind of really key part of my own art practice, but I respect them as part of the kind of poetics of and the dynamics of working with people in a participatory way. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate your openness to go on this journey. We didn't talk about what the questions might be. I knew that you would be doing this in 3 parts, but I didn't know what you were going to show. I've learned so much, and I'm so grateful, as I'm sure we all are. I hope that this time over the last few minutes has given folks who are together in this digital room a bit of space to be able to contemplate, to be curious. And so it's back over to Laura to share and do a little bit of digital magic to corral us all. And I know, Jake, that you and I are both just really looking forward to carrying on the dialogue. And I'm grateful that you wanted to be part of this with Art and Christianity. And thank you for the work that you do, which was clearly and continues to be appreciated because you won an award for it. So that was quite good. And that's partly what this series is about, to celebrate those awards as well. So grateful to you and curious about what the group will be sharing with us next.
Yep, absolutely. So do turn on your cameras if you're happy with doing that, and do speak up. There are no questions in the chat that I can see. So if anybody wants to just either call out or raise your hand and ask something, please do. Oh, Caroline, I can see, has done that. Over to you, Caroline.
Sorry. I wasn't expecting to go first, but I will do since someone else has. Thank you so much. This has been really, really fascinating. And Jake, your work's lovely and beautiful and really moving. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. I've got a couple of questions, but I don't know if you want me to ask 2 or not. We'll see. I was interested in the way that Ayla asked you about the relationship to the Eucharist. There's another sort of rite of passage, I think, that is quite well, I don't know, to me at least, it seems quite prevalent in the work that you're doing with boats, and that is the idea of baptism. I was interested in the kind of, I don't know, Moses in his little basket and the ark and that kind of thing. And I wondered if there was a link perhaps for you to the ritual of baptism. And I also just wondered, and this is purely out of interest really, because I think he's doing something quite different, but it would have been around the same time as you were doing your work. I wondered if you knew the work of Hugh Locke and the kind of Armada style boats that he with that had any resonance with what you're doing. I know his is more about colonial history, but anyway, I don't know if there's anything in there.
Okay. Well, with the baptism, I think what interests me is this idea that these archetypal forms are cradling, they're protective, but they're also open and very vulnerable. And they, a kind of classic archetypal boat form mirrors very much, and especially based on kind of perhaps indigenous canoes and so on, they mirror the kind of human form. So in terms of the kind of rites of passage, if you like, the boat is, I think, significant in entry into the world. And I talked about sort of cradle and womb, but also the tomb, and the sense of being a vessel to sort of carry the soul to the next life. So I think that birth and death are shot through with the boat archetype, which is why, if when I did some work in Birmingham around talking to people about what the boat meant to them, it was extraordinary how it resonated very deeply with them, even in a city in the center of the country. And I think it's because of that primal archetypal sense. People recalled being very vulnerable in a boat, or being carried to safety in a boat. But I think I'm not specifically preoccupied with baptism, nor specifically with death as a rite. But I think those are very close to the surface with the work. Yeah. It's non-verbal in a sense. It's not pinned down, but it's hovering around. It's permeating the work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
There's a question from Carol, and if we have time, we could come back to the connection possibly with Hugh Locke's work. But let's go to Carol next.
Okay.
You'll need to unmute, Carol.
Always forget. Hi, Jake.
Hello, Carol.
I'm a great admirer of Corita's work as well as yours, as you know. I've had this thing, a bit of teaching as well, about the use of text and the wonderful sense of slogans that she used in so many ways. But I question now, when she was using it in the 60s and beyond, if we used Coca-Cola's slogan now, or whoever's, would we get sued? How much of that has changed, the copyright? I know this is not quite direct, but it's been on my mind of that. But I also love what you said, Ellis, about using slogans, not slogans, but words from the Eucharist and other prayers, different things. But I guess in that corporate world, I just wonder how much that's changed, and how, in terms particularly of protest at the moment, of using words of protest, of how careful we have to be, because I love what she did with that and the images, but the images as well as the text. We're in a different place now.
Yes,
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
No, just similar, really, that she was in a very different time, but I love the kind of way in which she sort of plucks. She's kind of subverting, and I think having she's taking the advertising language and then turning it on its head in order to draw attention to issues that were close to her heart around social justice. And I think that's brilliant. And she does it with so much, panache that you're just there with her. And so whether she got into, I don't know what Coca-Cola would have felt about that piece, but it's interesting. But probably now she would be facing lawyers, I would imagine.
I'd be glad to hop in a little bit with that too, if I can, which is that one of the things that was said about her, because she became really quite a mainstream successful figure, right, is that she did for the Eucharist what Andy Warhol did for Campbell's soup. And the way that different kinds of images from mass media and from commercial sources of various kinds, the way that they were being manipulated and then used as raw material, and the merging of those things, she's part of this massive movement. The copyright thing and corporatization is a fascinating point. What it made me think of wasn't so much about whether or not, General Mills sued her for the use of a G logo when she offers the big G stands for goodness, but that she got in terrible trouble together with Immaculate Heart College for doing things with the relationship between words and scripture and doctrine. So the image of tomato, which is the juiciest tomato of all, came from a Del Monte canned tomato advertisement, that our tomatoes are the juiciest. And so a friend of hers wrote and said, well, then it's not irreverent to say that the Virgin Mary is the juiciest tomato of all. And some conservative Catholics flipped out, as many of us know, and others decided to print that. And there was a big Catholic publication that then just sent it as a Christmas card that year. So it really divided opinion, right? And I'm always curious about what happens when the corporate world and when really the scriptural world collide, because we have that experience, let's say, of capitalism and being sold things or not sold things, and theology and the presence of the incarnation and being sold things or not sold things. If we're told to come and buy without money, and if we pay to Caesar what is Caesar's, then I don't know. I shouldn't be saying this while we're all being recorded, right? But I try it, you know, like as an artist, put some stuff out there, risk being sued. I don't have any money for that. I don't have any insurance. I probably can't personally come and help you, but I'd be excited. I'd be up for it. Let's see it. Summer exhibition 2026.
Yeah. Thank you, Carol. And thank you, Ayla.
Any more questions? I think Stephen is raising his hand. Unmute yourself, Stephen.
There we go. That's it. Are we on now? Sorry, as I said, I'm still getting used to Zoom things. It's not so much a question, but Jake, I want to say how beautiful your work is. It was. I met you very briefly at the awards ceremony in 2019. I've learned so much more this evening, hearing you describe, that's the wrong word, talk about what you have created, what you've birthed, your ideas. It's absolutely beautiful. That's all I wanted to say, really, is that thank you. Thank you for pushing through on what you have done that has clearly blessed so many people and is continuing to do so, because when we finish our pieces of work, whatever they are, and we often move on to the next thing, often for me, halfway through a project, I'm excited about the next one. However, what we've done is still new. For the first time, it's seen by somebody else. So it's an ongoing thing. And it's just like us as individuals. When we're born as little babies, wow, that's great. But we have a life, all right? And we are giving out all the time, not just of ourselves, but our work and everything we've said. If you've written it, if you've composed it, whatever it is. So good on you, mate. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Yeah.
I guess one other thing to touch on, just what the previous lady was saying about whether one gets sued or not. I was really in angst because 2 years ago, for the first time ever, I did some street art, which I'd never done before. Often at various carol services, I'll take an 8-foot square canvas and I paint the nativity scene. And in 5 minutes, I take it to Calvary and it's very in your face. And I was asked to do this on the street for there's a national thing called Shine Your Light. And different churches around the country were going out into the high street. And I actually cut part of my presentation because there's a bit where I'm putting my hand in red paint and throwing it at the cross. And I thought, was I being afraid of being sued or upset somebody or the hate police coming round? And it's the first time as an artist that I've really had to struggle and grapple with, in a way, issues beyond my control. So have you ever had to come across that?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, not in quite that way. I mean, my work is quite quiet, it's quite contemplative, it's quite mystical. Some people actually came into Birmingham Cathedral and said, "Where is it? We've heard about this soul boats. Where is it?"
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and I really liked that. So I know that a lot of artists would perhaps feel, you know, they wouldn't be, but I really like that because it meant that there was a kind of level of integration around the work and the worship and the life of the space, sensitivity to the space, I hope, which and a kind of a gentleness. So my work is not kind of generally kind of in your face and kind of confrontational. It's what I hope it does is gets under the door into people's souls and their veins and their hearts.
Well, I think it does, because once you notice it, in a way, you discover it for yourself. If it's in your face, you take it or leave it. Most people run away from it if it's in your face. But if you discovered it, then there's a bigger sense of you owning it, isn't there?
Yeah. But what the reason why I kind of focused upon Corita and is why she's so inspirational to me is that holistic vision that art and life are interconnected, and that art is a vehicle for connection. And her vision is so holistic and so much needed for our time. But I do admire the way she called things out big time, and I totally respect Corita, for that. And it's something I don't do, but it's there in the work, I think, for those that are interested in it. And certainly, if I, the insides of the soul boats, because I'm the only person in the world, in a sense, who's read and seen every single one of the 2,000. I've looked at every one. There were some very, very angry rants and calling out of injustice, and cries of real desperation from people. So I hope my work is a container for the lament, the grief, the anger, as well as the thanksgiving and the joy. And I think that I hope that it spans both. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you.
No, that's all right. Good.
Thank you, Stephen. Let's go to Catherine. I think you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Jake. It's just really great to hear you talk. Really enjoyed thinking back to soul boats, and remember how lovely it was to live with soul boats. You mentioned about the air currents and the bobbing around, responding to big congregations or little congregations. And it literally in the evening reflected what was going on. So it was really interesting and exciting for those of us who went in every day, and that was our place of work, to live with your work and continue to reflect on it. I do remember some anxiety before it was installed, because we just decorated the cathedral, and lovely responsible people at the cathedral were worried about the decor being tampered with. But then, of course, when you came to take it down and return all the boats to the participants, people wanted to keep it. They didn't want it to go. So that sort of experience of living with your work. And I wanted to ask about context, really, and your work installed in churches and cathedrals, how that context, what's different about working with places of worship rather than white spaces. Just if you'd like to reflect on that a little bit, how that for you as an artist.
I think you're working with a place which is drenched in prayer, in sorrow, in grief, in thanksgiving, and I think it takes a kind of slightly holding back and slightly working with the space as a kind of living presence, if you like. You work with the participants, but you also work with the space. So I think it requires a certain kind of maybe a little bit of humility, a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of running with the kind of space. So the height, for example, that the boats were hung was partially dictated by the building, but it was it's a very subtle thing. I mean, this last summer I worked in St. David's Cathedral, and that was a very ancient space, and it was, I think it's, how shall I put it? It's really hard to, I think you just want to honor all of the lives that are, in terms of a medieval cathedral, the lives that have been lost in building the space, and your intervention, I think, for me, it feels like it has to be measured and quite a subtle listening kind of process, rather than coming in with although I understand how sometimes a very different kind of intervention by an artist in a cathedral space can work, and there have been all sorts of examples since soul boats of that which have worked really well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine.
I think we have a question from Julia as well.
Unmute myself.
Yeah, great, thank you.
I just wanted to say that I love how wonderful, I've written this down because otherwise I should get carried away with my thoughts, and stunning the boats looked, and working on that ground between this world and the next, like shoved up to that border, which is what happens when somebody that you really love or whatever, it passes into another life, and how that can be inspiring artistically, and so you're kind of like in tune with your artistic self, but also with a part of you that's expressing
that journey on that movement and that being pressed up against it and what you see in that thing that people call thin places. So I thought it was just a really beautiful, brilliant, and it will certainly really help me, the idea of the boat as well, you know, like, because it's like it's not a gentle passage, but it also is as well, isn't it? Because it can be turbulent. And that I also really liked that the privacy that you saw inside these 2,000 boats, and you holding all those things that would be so precious to a divine ear, wouldn't they? You know, but they are also hidden up there, so that, you know, kind of like the divine ears are kind of looking at them. And how when you do an artistic project as well, you kind of like instill all of you into it, and then it takes on another life of its own, way far and beyond something that you could imagine, and you just feel like honored that you've acted like a little bit of a conduit almost. And it's just like it's just like a sort of like a flow of you giving and receiving in this like intense phase. And I just thank you so much for that. And would it be possible to get hold of a boat, or is it finished now?
Just contact me via the website.
Okay, because I know other people who would love that.
Just saying that Corita's energy for enabling other people to connect through the visual arts and so on is infectious, and what you're describing
it's so infectious
is I think she's completely incredible in terms of how she and there are people who, you know, there are she taught sort of art teachers, like, and there are pupils, and then pupils of their pupils who've been taught for generations, who talk about this amazing woman, this nun, an art teacher and an artist. And so actually it's rippling down generations in California, but across the world. It's wonderful, positive. Corita says doing and making are acts of hope. We do need some hope.
We do need it, and you certainly need it when somebody's taken in one of the boats, and that might be their time to be in the boat, but you're on for a while on that other shore. But you kind of like need to sort of like, you get a tiny glimpse of that passage. And I also wanted to say to you how amazing as well that, was it a bishop or a vicar allowed you to play in the church? Because it's the only bit I remember of this really important study I did. The only bit of 2 years of study was that our ability to play as kids is what forms the basis of our creativity as adults. And it just stuck in my mind that from that place. And are there more people like that? Because I'd love to make contact with someone who would give me the key to a church.
And of course it links with Corita's lovely word "plork," which is that fusion of play and work.
Plork. Yes, I shall definitely. Thank you for introducing me to her. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
pleasure.
Julia, I hope you'll stay in touch with Art and Christianity, because there may be churches, places, vicars, all sorts that we definitely get involved, and we encourage play.
I'd love to very much. Okay, yes, I shall be in touch. Thank you.
Quick further last question, I think, from John.
Thank you. I wasn't sure I was going to get the chance, because I know we're running out of time. Jake, lovely to connect with you.
Good to connect, John.
We were delighted in Coventry Cathedral to welcome Jake making boats, which was beautiful. And I won't say more about that, but it was an extraordinary thing. And thank you I confess I'd never heard of Corita Kent before. So I don't know how many of the rest of us in that place, but that's just an unbelievably valuable introduction. So thank you. This business about art helping us connect with each other, which is one of the things we talk about a lot here in Coventry. And I was just wanting to prompt you really briefly to reflect a tiny bit more on why art can connect us more than words, because in some ways words connect us, but then obviously, and although instinctively I think, yes, art connects, and I often say that to people, where are the examples of art doing the opposite and actually art dividing us? Because maybe we go to different interpretations of something and actually it kind of takes us on a journey away from each other, which might then ultimately lead us to coming back. Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah. I mean, I suppose, you know, the art has always been a signifier of status and wealth, and in our capitalist culture, I think it's been monetized, and I think that, you know, to have a Gainsborough or whatever on your wall was a certain kind of badge in the 18th century or whatever. So I think that, but what's so refreshing about Corita is this kind of, you know, she's looking to indigenous cultures who have no word for art. So making a meal is art. Having a friend for a drink is art. Your garden is art. And I think for me, that's a richer, deeper vein of creativity. And you know, it's not one that I was taught at art college, which was much more about kind of the classic artist in their studio, remote and removed from the world. But for me, Corita's vision is so incarnational in that it's rooted in people's lived experience, and art becomes this kind of vehicle because it's not frightening. She's got a way of introducing it which is really, you know, wonky friendly and kind of malleable, and it's not, I'm not at all surprised that she was inspired by Balinese culture. So yeah, I mean, we haven't probably got time for me to go into it much more than that, but I think it can divide people, and I think it has historically, and I'm very acutely aware of, you know, social justice issues and issues around racial justice, which have excluded voices. Probably the reason why, John, you don't know Corita is that, you know, she was largely written out of art history by male art historians in the sort of 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it's only in recent years that she's been rediscovered, as it were. But it's, you know, there's all kinds of power plays going on in the art world. I'm not interested in that really. I'm just, you know, looking to her as a kind of inspirational artist teacher, and it's very much as the integration of the two as well that I find powerful. But yeah, maybe that's hinted at some of the things.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, John. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Really good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I think we probably should round it off there. Nice little comment again from Vivian about Hugh Locke's work, and Hugh Locke is everywhere at the moment. So
yes, fantastic work. And I
obviously a whole different set of issues. But interestingly, actually, that work was first, I think, maybe not first, but it was shown in a church. In Folkestone, I think. Yeah. Thank you all so much. It's been lovely to connect with you all, and thank you for your contributions and for listening so intently, which I can tell how well you listen. I just wanted to say, if you are new to art and Christianity and you're not and you haven't explored our website or come to any of our other events, do consider popping on over to our website, artandchristianity.org. Have a look around, and I'm clutching here 3 little copies of our journal. If you join, that's something you get 4 times a year. So it'd be lovely to see you again and to make more connections with you. Thank you so much to Ayla, and of course to Jake for your presentation this evening. It's been really wonderful. Perhaps we can do a little sort of virtual hand clap for you.
Thank you.
So grateful to you, Jake, and thank you all so much for being here. It's just a pleasure and an honor.
Great. Have a good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Many thanks. Goodbye.
Thank you.